All right. Well, good morning to those of us joining on the West Coast. Good afternoon for those on the East Coast. I'm seeing those numbers climb, and that is exciting. And because of that, I think we're just going to jump right into the material today because there's so much good content to cover. My name is Carrie Scott. I work at Spruce Health. We are here today to talk about money leaks in your private practice, and we are joined by Whitney Owens, a licensed professional counselor, a group practice owner, podcast host, and subject matter expert. Whitney, thank you so much for joining us today. I think everyone's excited about the content that we're going to cover.
Thank you.
Yeah, and with that, let's actually run through the agenda quickly. So we're going to meet Miss Whitney Owens, get to know her and her background, quickly intro Spruce to any of you who might be new to us, and then we're going to get right into it. What numbers to look at and track in your practice, understanding basically like where to put your revenue, how are you allocating that? The key difference between a W-2 employee and a 1099 contractor, how to set clinical rates and improve retention. And we're going to take questions. So quick bit of housekeeping. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to drop in questions that you may have. And I encourage you to drop them in as we go. We may not be able to take them in real time on each slide, but we're going to spend a bunch of time at the end to answer all of them. The session is being recorded, so if for some reason you have to drop off or if you miss something, I will be sending the link to the recording later today, so you will have access to that and you can revisit the content at any time. I think I have covered everything I wanted to cover. Let's look at the next slide again, just to sort of remind everyone why we're here today. And so it's really just to kind of hone in on those key areas where you may be leaking money from your practice and not even knowing it. It's exciting to have Whitney here because whenever we have a live event, we can actually get those questions answered. Although Whitney did tell me that if we aren't able to get to all your questions, you can reach out to her after this event, and that's a really nice bonus. So on the next slide, I could talk all about Whitney, but I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell you a few things about her background.
Yes. Well, Carrie, thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and I'm excited to teach practice owners about money leaks. But to tell you a little bit about me, I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Georgia. I live in hot Savannah, so I'm right here on the coast. I have a group practice called Water's Edge Counseling. We have 15 therapists. I'm also a private pay practice, which is a little unique for a larger group practice. And so I'm always having to pay attention to money leaks going on in my practice. Along with running the group practice, I also have another business called Wise Practice Consulting. And it is a consulting business to help faith-based practice owners grow and scale their practice. Faith-based basically just meaning that faith is a part of your personal life. It might be a part of your business, might not, but that's kind of what we specialize in working with. And I've spoken at a lot of different conferences. You can see the list there. I love engagement and speaking and interacting with practice owners. So looking forward to hanging out with you guys today.
Awesome. Thank you, Whitney. And then just a real quick blurb on what Spruce is for anybody today who may not be familiar with Spruce. So nutshell version, healthcare communication platform. It's designed for easy HIPAA compliance, which I know is top of mind for a lot of you joining us today. And it consolidates communication channels. So it's your business phone, your fax, your text, your telemedicine, all in one solution. In fact, I had someone say to me when I first started with Spruce that it's like having their office in their pocket. And I thought that's a pretty cool, succinct way of describing what you can do with Spruce. Pretty much everything. You can run your practice from the app. So that's it in a nutshell. If you want to know more about Spruce, by all means, drop a question in. But otherwise, I just want to get right into the meat of why we're here today. And I'm going to turn it over to Whitney, and I'm going to turn my video off. So thank you, Whitney.
Well, thank you, Carrie. Yeah, and so before I get going here, just wanted to first tell you how much I love Spruce. I used another phone company in my baby days of group practice, and it stunk. It was hard to communicate. I could never contact the company, and I knew I had to find something different. So I found Spruce. It has been with us for easily over 5 years. We use it every single day in the practice and couldn't be happier with what I get out of the package and how it helps the therapists, and the clients really like it too. So just wanted to let you know I'm a big proponent, and that was part of the reason I wanted to partner with Spruce today in doing a webinar. And so when we were talking about what to do for today, money leaks in private practice, I created this content and knew that there were so many leaks going on in practices and talking to practice owners, and they didn't even know it. And so I kind of was going back to the same basic concepts. I was like, we need to look at these numbers. We need to look at these things. So I put a webinar together about it. And so my hope is that you walk away with at least one thing in your practice that you can say, hey, here's where money is leaking, and here's what I need to do to fix it. So like Carrie said, throw your questions in there. If we don't get to all of them, we'll definitely tackle them later, either through email or at the end of the presentation. But I also want to let you know that this presentation is right on the surface. I wanted to give you as much just general information of things that you could be researching further. So I'm hitting the topics really quickly so that you can start thinking, oh, am I losing money that way? And really spend some time diving into that category. So I had some questions here for you to be thinking about. For just a second, just be thinking about what are some of the best financial investments that you have made within your practice. And then I'm also going to have you think about what are maybe some of the losses. So if you're someone who likes to write, grab that Post-it note and start writing right now, or pull out that legal pad or make those notes. When I personally think about best financial investments that I've made within my group practice, honestly, number one was hiring a consultant, because that was the very thing that helped me grow into a group practice. When I was a solo practice owner, I didn't know what I was doing to hire people. And boy, I didn't want to make mistakes along the way. So I hired a consultant, had one for 2 full years. That was when I went from no therapists to about 8 therapists within that 2-year period. So it was a big financial investment. But when you look back on it, I was making easily 3 to 4 times more per year at the end of that 2 years than I had been making prior. And so it well covered the cost. Another really great financial investment for me in my practice was SEO. So that's search engine optimization. That is how Google finds out how to find our website. We get over 60% of our referrals simply from Google. Okay. Private pay, Google clients come in our way. And so being able to invest in search engine optimization, either hiring out a company or taking a course myself and doing it, not that I took it, my marketing director did though, because I'm not that savvy. But anyway, it has made a big difference in what we're doing in our business. When we had, before we did SEO, we're having 200 to 300 people maybe hit the website a month. Once we've done SEO, you're looking at 12 to 1,500 people hitting the website every month. So I would definitely say that was worth that financial investment. So I think it's really good that you look back on what are the things that have really worked well. Ask other practice owners, what are the financial investments that they've made in their practice that have been game changer for them? And then what are the big financial losses within your practice? And I'm going to go into some of these as we go through the slideshow, but we're all going to make either mistakes in how we invest our money in our practice, or it's just going to happen naturally. There are going to be things you don't notice. Like I remember one time I had paid for LinkedIn to do a job ad for us, did some kind of free trial. And then all of a sudden I thought I had gone in and told that thing to cancel my credit card, but evidently I hadn't. And I lost lots of money through that experience. Now, fortunately, I was able to get in touch with them and get those funds refunded. But it was an easy mistake that happened. And so that's going to happen too within your practice. So we can't prevent every money leak, but we can do a lot of things to make it easier on us. So I want to be challenging you to be writing those down as we go. What are the good things and what are the not so good things that you've been doing? So foundationally here, for your growth, you have got to know your numbers. I cannot stress this part enough. I am amazed how often I'll ask some questions to practice owners and they have no idea what their numbers are. This could be, what is your monthly revenue? How many people are calling your practice? How many clients do you see a week, a month? We're going to go through those numbers today. But if you don't know your numbers, you don't know what's going on. And the larger you get, the more important that it is that you know your numbers, because it's easier and easier for things to slip through the cracks because you've got so much more to manage. You know, the idea of more money, more problems. This is true for a practice owner, because if you're not watching that stuff, you're losing it. Okay. So you've got to make sure that you know your numbers and you have systems for all those things. And we're going to point some of those out today. So here, we're going to go into some details on some of these on our slides, but here are numbers that I want you to track. If you're not tracking this stuff, write it down and make sure that you start tracking it. You have to track any and every aspect of your business, especially when you're making a financial investment, right? Don't you want to know if that financial investment is actually worth it or not? And I'm amazed how many people will financially invest in something within their practice. Maybe it's something for their marketing or some kind of software, and they're not watching to see if it's actually working or helpful for their practice. So you can see the areas here that we're going to tackle. Marketing. That's a huge, huge one, because we put a lot of money into marketing. You've got to make sure that you're getting out of it more than what you're putting into it. We're going to talk some about administrative duties, because you might have an admin that you're paying at your practice, and it's important that you're getting out of that what you're putting into it. We're going to talk about practice inquiries in just a second, so I'm going to pass that one. Looking at number of sessions, that's how many clients are coming in. That's for solo or group practice owners. Your paid marketing, client retention, so that's your ability to keep clients at your practice. Pay rates, so we're going to talk a little bit about those W-2 1099s, and expenses. Now, expenses is actually pretty simple here. You probably have QuickBooks or some way that you're managing your money. Look, if you don't have QuickBooks, please go get QuickBooks. That was one of my biggest mistakes early on. I was a solo practice owner. Legit, I had a checkbook, and a ledger, and I was writing things in. I also was doing my own taxes. What an embarrassment. It was awful. I'd get to the time of taxes and it would be the worst experience ever. So get an accountant, get them on your dream team. But with that checkbook ledger, I was writing down all my expenses and keeping up with everything. So somebody told me to get QuickBooks, and I was a practice owner that was solo. I was like, I don't want to pay for that. Holy cow. It's like $15, and it links to your bank account and you can see everything. Okay. So I encourage you to get QuickBooks if you don't have it. And then when you do get it, go in there and look at your expenses. It'll categorize it, or you can go in and categorize it yourself or get a bookkeeper to do that for you. And I would encourage you maybe once a month, maybe every few months, go in there and look at your expenses. Make sure there are things that you really are using and need in your practice. So that's a simple, basic skill. I do that at least once a month. I sit with my admin as well, because she also has a credit card for the practice, and we look at what's going on with the money to make sure that we're not spending money on things we don't actually need in the practice. But let's talk for a few minutes about those practice inquiries. If your intake system, and this is for solo or group practice centers, if you don't have that process down, you're going to really struggle throughout the longevity of a client's experience at your practice. So when I'm talking about the intake experience, I'm talking about when clients reach out to you for therapy. You need to have that process as easy as possible, because you don't want to lose clients along the way. When you're losing a client, you're losing money. That's a huge money leak within your practice. In fact, most businesses are spending their majority of their time and energy on the marketing of getting a new client. And this is something we'll also be talking about some in the webinar today, but a lot of practice owners are losing those clients along the way. Either they schedule the appointment and they don't follow through, or they start coming in for therapy and they stop along the way with therapy. Okay, so they might come in for 3, 4 sessions. We really want to see them coming in for at least more like 6 to 8 sessions, and that's going to get into that client retention part. But all that to say is, once they've scheduled that appointment, you really need to make sure it's as easy as possible for them to actually show up for that first appointment. So when you're tracking this process, the marketing process, when clients are calling you, there are some really important things that you need to grab from them. One of those is just finding out how they heard about you. So when we do our intake calls here at the practice, my first thing I say is your name and phone number, in case I need to get back in touch with you. And the next question is, how did you hear about us? It's not, what is your insurance? It's not, what is the issue bringing you in? How did you hear about us? The reason is, I'm spending a lot of money, my SEO, or it might be some paid advertising I'm doing in the area. It might be a meeting that I went to, or maybe I'm a part of the Chamber of Commerce here in my area. Whatever it is, I need to know if people are coming and if people are showing up for therapy and if my money is well worth what I'm putting into it. So a great example here is the city of Savannah has a magazine called the Savannah Magazine. And my dream was to be in the Savannah Magazine as a practice. I thought that would be the coolest. And they have a special advertising, like not advertising, but a special section that comes out within the Savannah Magazine that's specifically for healthcare providers. So when that issue was coming out, it goes in every doctor's office around Savannah. Okay. This seemed like the thing to do. So at that time, I had about 4 or 5 other therapists within my practice. And for me to get a page in there was $800. And someone came to our office and interviewed us about therapy. And we have this cute picture outside our office. And I was like, this is it, right? Guess how many people we got from that? One new client came from that. Now, one new client who's paying $100 a session, who comes in for at least 8 sessions, sure, that just paid for the marketing that I did for it. But then you got to calculate in the cost of paying that therapist that worked with them, unless I'm the one working with them, or paying my admin that took the call, or paying for the rent, the expenses of having a practice open. You've got to consider all those things. So I want you to track how people are hearing about you, how they're getting to your practice. Other things that are important to track would be, how are clients reaching out? Are they reaching out to you by phone, through online website portal requests? Are they contact form on your website? Maybe they're emailing you. How are they reaching out? And then watch which ones are converting better. Okay. And when I say convert, that means they decide to come see you for therapy. If they are converting higher in a certain way, you want to push people into that method of how to contact you. So for example, it's different everywhere. I hear different things from practice owners. Some practice owners tell me my contact form is it. Everyone reaches out that way. For us, it's phone calls. Okay. I ran these numbers and noticed that if a client calls our practice, they are 60 to 70% likely, more like 70, to schedule a call, to schedule their first appointment with us by calling us. If they reach out through our online portal and schedule their first request, they're 50% likely to show up for their first appointment. And if they reach out and fill out that contact form on the website, they're 30% likely to show up for that first appointment. So you better believe that when people come to our website, it pushes them to call. I don't want them to fill out that contact form because they probably aren't really going to come in. But if they call, they're much more likely to show up for their appointment. Yeah, and truly, money is important, but we do this work because we want to help clients. We want them to have a good therapeutic experience. And so when we can convert them through a phone call and get them to come in for a session, we're helping them, we're helping the community, we're helping the practice. It's a win-win for everybody. So you've got to know your numbers and have a system for tracking on the front end with your process. And just to note, a question I get a lot, so I want to make sure I say this to you guys, is what is an appropriate conversion rate? So that's someone reaches out for therapy and converts into a client and comes for that first session. If you are an insurance-based practice, that number needs to be at least 70%. 70 to 80 is pretty typical. If you were a cash pay practice, that number needs to be at least 30%. It needs to be 30 to 50%. Okay. So make sure that you've got that conversion down. All right, so now we're going to jump into, and I have a whole teaching I do on tracking calls, but I just wanted to give you all a little bit of that because I think it's important that you're thinking about this. Make sure that you invest in some kind of tracking system for your calls, not just a spreadsheet. So many therapists show me their spreadsheet and I'm like, where's your percentage of conversions? How are you able to track these things? Because it's just names on a spreadsheet or initials. You want something that really can show you the numbers in a fast way. I use a Google form. And so I converted that Google form, and every month we replace it, and I'm able to go in there and I'm able to look at it and give me those percentages like that. We're filling it out in real time. But I'm also in the process of converting into a customer relationship management software. It's a CRM. And it's also going to track all this. So every client that calls, it goes into the CRM, and we can track all of this data that I just talked to you about. So there are a lot of different companies that offer those. I personally use Therapy Flow. If that's something that you're interested in, just reach out to me and I can get you connected. But a CRM is a really great thing. And I would recommend it probably more for larger group practices to be able to track all that data. All right. So let's talk about financial leaks going on in your private practice. Here are some quick numbers because y'all, I am a numbers-based girl. I love parameters. And so I like to be like, okay, here's a number, stick with it. That makes my life easier. I love rules. That was like what I loved about getting married was, hey, give me the rules so I know how you do this whole thing and I can follow these rules and have fun within the process, which is exactly what I did. So I got the big Emily Post book for weddings, right? And so when I think about my practice, I want to know, what are the general rules? What are the general numbers? Not that I have to perfectly be that way, but it gives me an idea and a framework to work within. So I'm going to give you those numbers here today. So quick numbers. 10%. Your monthly rent should never exceed 10%. In fact, it's really better to be more like 7 to 8%. And I'm talking about of your total revenue that you're bringing into your practice, right? So if you're bringing in $100,000 a year, if I'm doing my math quickly off the top of my head correctly, that'd be $10,000 a year on your rent, right? So you don't want to be spending more than that. If you are, that's not good, and you're probably losing money. I see a lot of therapists invest in buildings and leasing that they don't need to be doing yet, especially when they start a group practice. So a solo practice owner will be like, well, I'm going to start a group, but I got to give everybody their own office. No, please don't do that. Hire someone to use your space when you're using it or when you're not using it. And then from there, you can start growing. It's great if you can find a space that's expandable. So maybe you're at a place where you can rent one office and then you can rent one next door as you grow, but that's not always the case. I also encourage you, if you have a group practice, you should make sure that you get 12 clinical hours a day out of each office. So this was a struggle here at my practice because I have 15 therapists. I have one that's virtual, so 14 therapists, and I think I had 9 offices, 8 or 9, and one was an admin office. And so they're all like, oh, I want to work from 10 to 6, or I want to work from 11 to 5. Well, that's great when everybody has their own office, but we need to see clients, and I can't have people coming in at 11 and missing out on the 9 and 10 o'clock hour that they could see a client, and then leaving at 5 because then they're missing out on a 6 and 7 and 8 o'clock client that they could see. And so I created a block schedule within my practice. So the blocks are 9 to 4, 12 to 8, and 4 to 8. You have to work one of those. That allows us to maximize the office space. So someone comes in from 9 to 4, then they leave, and someone else comes in from 4 to 8. If someone's doing the 12 to 8 shift, we can have someone come in from 9 to 12 before they come in. We want to maximize that space. So make sure that the rent's not over 10% and you're maximizing for 12 hours a day in each of your offices. And if you're not, you're losing the opportunity to make some money there. All right, let's move on to the next one, 20%. So ideally, your expenses need to be between 15 to 20% of your revenue. This percentage is closer to 15 or less for larger group practices. Just to give you an idea, my expenses are 12% of my monthly revenue. So I encourage you to run that number when we're done. Look at how much are you bringing in per month and what percentage is on expenses. If your expenses is over 20%, then I really encourage you to do what we talked about earlier, going through those expenses, seeing what you can get rid of, because that's a concerning number. Okay. And remember, larger you are, the smaller percentage should be spent on expenses. The opposite, though, is true for your payroll. So for group practices, the larger you are, the more you're spending on your payroll. 60%. Do not go over 60% when you run payroll. Now, that's not what you're actually paying them, because when we run payroll, we're talking about a W-2 payroll employee. That's your payroll taxes, all that fun stuff. Don't let it go over 60% in the end. And then if you're smaller, like if you're a smaller group practice, as you're growing, you want it really to be more like 30 to 35%. And I have noticed, at least with my practice, over time as I grew, that percentage went from 30, 35, 40, 45, and it just kind of grew over time. So there's some of your quick percentages so that you have those numbers written down. All right, now let's go into marketing, because I think marketing is where we're spending a lot of our money that we need to be watching and that we could be losing. Here are ways that you can look at your marketing to see if it's working. I sit down every single week and run my numbers. So I'm running my numbers for client sessions. How many clients did we see? How many calls did we get? How many conversions did we have? And then I start going through some of this stuff. I go onto my Google Analytics and I say to myself, okay, how many people are going to the website? Are those people actually converting? What's bringing them to the website? So you could set up a Google Analytics. If you don't have one already, I really encourage you to do that. And you can see some quick things. This actually happened last week. I went on there and I was like, our analytics are lower. Why are they lower? What happened? And I noticed that we did not blog last week. So we actually blog once a week. And I encourage you with blogging, just another quick tip, you need to blog consistently. Now, in an ideal world, you're blogging every single week at the exact same time, the exact same day, because Google wants to see that you're a consistent, good business, because they want to refer to businesses that are doing it right. Okay. But I understand that can't always happen. So even if it's every other week or even once a month, as long as you're doing it on the same day, very consistently, that's what Google wants to see. So when I went on my analytics, I noticed that we were down a little and I was like, what happened? And I noticed that we didn't blog last week. We actually usually blog on Wednesdays, and because of the Juneteenth holiday, the blog did not happen last week. And so our numbers were down. And I was like, wow, like that shows me that the money I'm investing in this blogging is really helpful because it is bringing more people. And I also noticed our calls were lower last week, not a lot, but just a little, and we scheduled less clients. So you could see how that goes hand in hand. So it's important that you're looking at your Google Analytics. Now, your Google Analytics is also going to go with your Google Ads. Google Ads, for those of you who maybe don't know about it, is a way that you can do paid advertising through Google. So you've probably noticed when you go onto Google and you type in maybe Italian restaurant in town, you'll see at the very top, it'll say sponsored or ad right beside the website. Well, that is when someone has paid for their site to pop up. Okay. And you can put in keywords for this and everything. Google Ads can be super effective when you do them correctly. I advise that no one does this on their own because I think it's a real science. I encourage you to hook up with a company. Again, I know lots of them. If you need referrals for that, let me know, or send me an email at the end. Let me know. I can send you some great companies that I love working with. But Google Ads is a quick win. It's getting people to your website. You do pay per click, and then you have keywords for those. I actually used Google Ads a couple of years ago when I hired 3 therapists at once because I wanted to fill them up quickly, and it worked. Within 3 months, they were all full. So I encourage you to be thinking about that if you need a quick win. People will ask me, what's the difference between Google Ads and SEO? Google Ads is a quick gift. Once it's given, it's over. Once people click, it's done. I think of SEO as the gift that keeps on giving. So SEO, once you put the money and time into it, it continues to grow with your practice. So you want to make sure, though, that if you're putting money into Google Ads, you need to be watching it every week, making sure that people are clicking, and not just that they're clicking, but that they're actually reaching out to you. So when I started my Google ad campaign, I noticed that people weren't converting as well. And that was when we realized, oh, we aren't pushing people to call enough, or, oh, we're not answering the calls live enough. So there's so many things through running a Google ad that you can start learning about your business. But don't just throw money into Google Ads and not watch what's happening to it. And so these were some of the things I talked about earlier, like printed materials. I gave the example of when I was in printed materials. So make sure that you're watching that. In fact, I never print materials anymore with my practice because I never get a good return on investment. The only time I will do anything printed, and I'm talking about getting in a newspaper or something like that, would be if they offer it for free. So sometimes if someone wants to come interview me on something, I'm willing to do that. So think about public speaking engagements. Maybe somebody's inviting you to come speak at an event in your town. Maybe you're able to go for free and they're not paying you. Well, if that's the case, you want to make sure you get a return on your investment, meaning you're getting clients from it. So if I'm going to go speak at a local school, like I go and speak to a student body or maybe do some education with the faculty, I want to make sure that they end up referring to me afterwards, right? So it's worth the time and energy I spend prepping because I could have spent that time and energy seeing clients. So those are some other things there for you to be thinking about. I host a podcast. We'll talk about that at the end. That's something else I'm always looking at. Hey, are people downloading my show? Because if they're downloading my show, they're hearing the things going on, and I'm seeing that my money was worth the investment. Okay, so evaluating your administrative tasks, administrative staff. This could be the person answering your phones. This could be a lot of things. Maybe you hire out somebody to do your marketing for you, or you have somebody doing your social media. I encourage you to go and make sure that they're tracking their time and that they're using it effectively. Sometimes administrative staff need help on how to prioritize tasks. They need you to let them know, hey, here's how much time I want you to spend on this task. Here's where I want you to put your other time. Even today, this happened today with one of my admins. She was like, I have these things to do. And she listed out like 7 things. And I was like, wait, that's the most important thing. That's the least important thing. And guess what's the most important thing? The thing that brings in money, right? So I'm saying, okay, get that girl on the website, get her bio written, because I need people to be able to schedule with her. That is a #1 priority because it's bringing in money. So you might need to be evaluating how they're spending their time, what tasks they're completing, and then making sure the things they are completing are working for your practice. Okay. So I'd be going back and looking at those things, the time and the outcome for your admin staff. Now, here's where people have lots of thoughts and questions. And I'm going to be honest with you, I get so much pushback when it comes to talking about clinician pay. But I'm also going to tell you, I have heard so many horror stories of practice owners. Okay. They call me after they've hired 5 or 7 therapists and they say, I'm making less money than I did as a solo practice owner and have more headaches. Y'all, that is the most disheartening thing to me. You started your group practice to serve your community, but also to free up your time to make more money, right? And you're more stressed and making less money than you did before. What are we doing here? It's not worth it. Just go back and be a solo practice owner if you're going to do that. So if your practice is not making profit, your practice is not going to make it. Hands down. You've got to make sure that you're making profit. Profit is what keeps your business running, because you got to keep putting that money into it so that it can keep going. So if you are in the red, that's so not good. I've had practice owners tell me they pull out loans to make payroll, loans. I've heard practice owners tell me they don't pay themselves at all or haven't in a long time. That is not good. Or they're burning the candle at both ends because they have 10 therapists working for them and then they have to see 20 clients a week because they're bringing in the bulk of the income. All that is not good. Okay. I don't want that to be you. So here is how I do my money within my practice when I'm hiring people. So 1099s and W-2s. A 1099 is a contractor. They are contracted to do a specific service within your business. I think the best example is a literal contractor. A couple of years ago, I got my kitchen redone. Look, I didn't control when they started the project. I didn't control when they showed up at my house. I didn't control what tools they used. They brought their own ladders. They brought their own hammers, whatever it was that they needed. Now I did pick out the paint, but I went and bought the paint and handed it to them, right? So they pick all that out. They do the job themselves. So I pay them to complete a project. I don't have a lot of say over the details of it. They complete the project. Okay. That's what it is when you hire a contractor for your practice. They sign a literal contract that you need to get approved by an attorney. They come, they see a client, they offer a service, you pay them a percentage of what comes in, or you say, hey, this is your flat rate, but most people do a percentage, and they provide their own equipment, their own liability insurance, they provide their own things to complete their job. 60% is the max that you should pay a contractor. If you pay more than that, it's not worth even having them, okay? And it's really important that you educate yourself on the difference between a contractor and a W-2, because oftentimes a contract model is treating their people like a W-2 model. In fact, I had another girl that I did some consulting with a few months ago. She had a group practice of 16 therapists, and she actually reached out to me to do consulting on opening a second location. And we started talking to each other, and I stopped her and I said, I know you have a contractor model, but this sounds like a W-2 model. You know, you're paying them like contractors, but you're treating them like W-2s. And that is a real money leak right there. And I see it all the time. So she called up her attorney, and her attorney was like, definitely, you are treating them like W-2s. You've got to change that because you're going to get in trouble. So she did the whole conversion to W-2s, which, by the way, I love seeing conversions to W-2s. I'm kind of biased. But she transitioned to W-2s, and Now she's doing it the correct way. So with contractors though, 50 to 60%, I think is good. I always err on the side of caution when it comes to money. I think it's a good way to be. So I always pay on the lower end. You can always give raises and do things for people later, but once you're paying them a certain amount, there's no going back. Okay. So W-2 employees, I pay my W-2 employees about 40% of what comes into the practice. Okay. So that's what they take in the session. So if they're bringing in $100, they're making $40. Okay. The reason is you've got to think about all the other stuff, taxes, liability insurance. I care for all their needs while they're here. I also provide retirement, health insurance, and PTO. So when I pay them 40%, I've got that wiggle room between 40 and 45% to provide all those benefits and all those extra things, which they really like. We do tend to see that a W-2 practice has better retention of their therapists than a contractor model. A contractor model does lead its way for people to leave more easily. So something for you to think about. And there's a little bit about the difference between 1099s and W-2s. All right, clinical rates. This is another way that you can lose money or just pay attention and make more money. Evaluate your own rate first. Is your rate comparable to other people in your area? For your specialty, your expertise, maybe you went and got EMDR trained. Your rate needs to go up if you did that. Maybe you just got your full license. At our practice, all of our therapists, when they get fully licensed, it goes up. So we end up raising that rate and we pay the therapist more, right? So make sure that it's comparable. This is the same with if you have insurance and you take insurance within your practice, look at what contracts you're looking at. Work with the ones that pay you better. Don't work with the ones who don't pay you very much. And if you get really full, start dropping those ones that don't pay a lot. You're losing money. You could be making more money per session. I also encourage you at least every 2 to 3 years, reach out to the insurance company and ask for a raise on your rate. You can write them a letter and request that. Super easy. And some will, some won't, but you could make more money by doing that. So I want you to do regular rate increases for both your private pay and those insurance paid clients. Caseloads. Big way I was saying at the very beginning, we lose money by losing clients along the way. Look, the clients that are already at your practice, you don't have to spend money to keep them really. You just have to have a good experience for them, right? And continue to help them. You have to pay so much money to get the first client. You're paying for the marketing. You're paying for someone to answer the call. You're paying for that streamlined system that you created to get those people in the door. So if you can keep them for longer, you're going to make more money. It seems to be, and I don't have a perfect equation for this, but when somebody reaches out for counseling, they need to stay at least 6 to 8 sessions for the practice to be able to make any kind of profit off of it. Usually for us, when they're hitting session 6, they've pretty much met what it costs to bring them in and the pay for the therapist to see them and all that kind of stuff. So you really need people coming in for more consistent therapy sessions. And then we do require, okay, well, sorry, I apologize. So the coming in for consistent sessions, that's that client retention that you see right there. I want you to track that. Watch what the retention is within your practice. In fact, I used to do this by hand. Every month I'd go in by hand and track retention if my therapists were keeping their clients, because if they're not keeping their clients, I'm going to start giving those clients the ones that keep them better, right? Because I'm losing money when they're not keeping those clients. But I actually just started working with a company called Practice Vital. There are probably some others that do this. This is the first company I'd ever found that did this, but it syncs with therapy notes and it tracks client retention for me. So I don't have to do it by hand anymore. And it's actually a lot more accurate because by hand is not accurate. Not every time, as much as I'd like to think I'm perfect. So that company is called Practice Vital. So I started working with them. They're it tracks my client retention for all my therapists, and I can pull reports and show it to them, which is really exciting. And then minimum caseload, we make sure that all the therapists in our practice see at least 10 clients a week. The reason is when they see less than that, the cost of having that therapist at the practice, the rent, the expenses, the liability, the supervision that we give them, my investment in them, it's a wash. They need to see at least 10 clients. And I see a lot of practices let their therapist see less than 10 clients, 4 or 5. you might not be making money. I want you to run those numbers. If you have a therapist that sees less than 10 clients, run the numbers to make sure you're making income off of them. All right, so clinician turnover, y'all, this is huge. Huge loss of money. If you can keep your therapists, you're keeping your clients. So every time a therapist leaves your practice, they take clients with them, or clients don't transfer to another person. Clients decide not to continue in treatment. So for me, I am big on culture within my practice. I spend a lot of money, time, energy investing in my team, because if they love their jobs, they're going to do good clinical work. Those clients are going to have a good experience. They're going to stay at the practice. So here are things that I do to improve people staying. Show appreciation. I just verbally tell them how great they are. We do birthday gifts. We have fun parties. We do a murder mystery every year. We dress up like characters and do the murder mystery dinner theater. We do a fundraiser dinner every year for an organization we partner with to help cure childhood cancer. We have a great Christmas party every year. Sometimes we go out to somebody's house and just have a pool party. So simple things to be able to show them how much I appreciate them. And we like to have fun. We have a good text thread where we make jokes and we send therapy memes. I try to give them as much independence as I can, but also create parameters. So yes, you have to work these hours, but you can schedule your clients however you want to within that time. Encouraging them to be creative, to come with me with their ideas for the practice, and trying to do the things. If there's not a reason not to do something, I try to do it to show them that I care about them, that I listen to them, and they have a lot to offer. We already talked some about pay rates and benefits, but I can tell you that when I made the transition to W-2s, my therapists stay longer. They love having health insurance. And y'all, I love having retirement for them, because so many therapists are not planning for retirement. And so I do retirement matching, which is a real gift to them. And they seem to really appreciate it, giving them an enjoyable work schedule and flexibility within their job. So business consulting. I told you this at the very beginning. I was so glad that I had a business consultant when I was starting my group practice. And I truly believe that a lot of people make mistakes simply because they don't know what they don't know. In fact, I was consulting with another person not too long ago, and she didn't understand that she could call her liability insurance and talk to an attorney when something had come up in her practice. I was like, yeah, that's included, and I just saved her probably a couple $100 because she was going to call her attorney locally, and that was going to be a lot of money. So it can be really quick, simple things like that. The pay rate stuff, I think it's good to have a consultant to really look at what you're paying your therapist and look at that stuff very closely. So that's another reason you'd hire somebody. So a business consultant can help you identify those money leaks in your practice. They also often have great referrals and discounts on services, like with Spruce. So if you have a consultant you work with, they might be able to say, hey, here's a code for Spruce, or here's a code for some other great company that you're going to be working with. And so you're saving yourself money. That is a plus, right? Consultant can tell you what services to work with and not work with. So they have experience working with certain companies. So maybe for website design, they can say, hey, you should work with this company, probably not that one, because you might go work with that other company and it not turn out well. And then you've wasted all that time and money on your website, which is terrible. I personally also got business consulting when I was further along with my group practice, probably when I was like 8 to 10 therapists. I hired someone who specialized in leadership coaching, and I did that for 6 months. And that was also a game changer for me in my ability to communicate with my team, my ability to create better policies and procedures, because I didn't have a lot of those in place, to be honest with you. And so that business coach really helped me create that culture for my practice, which I believe created the ability for people to stay here longer and enjoy their jobs more, which saved me a ton of money in the long run. So create those processes and procedures in your practice. That way your therapists aren't confused and breaking rules, which a lot of times will cost you money. And I want you to develop new streams of income. That's something else to be thinking about with a business consultant. So I had my group practice, then I decided to start doing consulting. And so having a business consultant help me set that up was really helpful. So maybe you have a program that you want to start on the side, or maybe you want a podcast. I think having a business consultant that's done the things that you want to do, who can take you faster through it and to the other side faster, you're going to make more money faster. People say all the time, I want to start a group practice, but I'm not ready, or I don't have the money, or whatever the case may be, right? But I know I want to do it. Okay, well, you could do it today. And 6 months from now, you're going to be making more money than you are today. But if you wait 6 months, you're not going to be making that money for another 6 months. But if you started today, think about where you'd be a year from now, right? I had another practice owner I worked with. She made 4 times the amount of money a year after she started her group practice. 4 times. Now, she was a real go-getter. She hired 2 people within 3 months. But it's important that you think about business consulting if you really want to take it to the next level and save yourself a lot of money. So we're about to take questions here. So hopefully Carrie is ready to shoot them out. But I wanted to just let you know about my podcast. So my company, like I said, is Wise Practice Consulting. I host a podcast every single week. Would love for you to follow it, write reviews, whatever you want to do, where you can just get more of this information. I want to give it out for free. I want you to learn. And then there is my email. My website's also wisepracticeconsulting.com. You can go on there and fill out a consulting application if you do want to work with us. Regardless if you work with me or not, I think business consulting is great. There's a lot of great consultants out there. But if you have questions that we don't get to today, write my email down, shoot me an email. I love hearing feedback and hearing from you guys. So yeah, I'm ready to take questions.
Okay, awesome. Whitney, you are such a good speaker and storyteller. I've just been enraptured this entire, 46 minutes. I've just been zoned in on you. So thank you for that. And yes, we do have questions. So I'm going to start up at the top. The first question is from Becky, and she's wondering what SEO course you took.
Yes. Simplified SEO consulting. And if you use the code WISE or WISE Practice, it's one or the other, you can get a discount. But I use their DIY courses and love that.
Perfect. Thank you. This is from an anonymous attendee. They're wondering, how did you find those percentages regarding retention via different contact methods?
Yeah, so I tracked it within my practice. So
Okay.
I started watching. I have this Google form that I use, and so whenever somebody reaches out, we put how they reached out, and then we put down if they scheduled or not. And so then I go into my form and I look at it and rank all those. Okay,
brilliant. Some of these questions I'm not sure I understand, but maybe you will. So let's see. This question is, where do licenses, conferences go? I'm a solo practitioner and pay that out of the business account. Oh, so I'm saying as line items, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, you could definitely pay that out of your business account. And I have a line item for conferences actually, or continuing education. So you can put that in.
Okay, perfect. Do you use a blogging service? And if so, can you recommend any ideas for this? Yeah, this is a good question. It's important that if you do use a blogging service, that they're not repurposing blogs. It needs to be original content. So anyone you reach out to, please ask about that. Don't just use ChatGPT to write your blogs, because ChatGPT is actually taking content from Google. So it's repurposing that content. So you got to be super careful when you're doing that. Again, simplified SEO actually does have a blog writing component that someone will write your blogs and optimize them. And I did use that for a short time. But I actually have a marketing director at my practice, and she writes my blogs for me and optimizes them and posts them on the website. So if you can get a marketing director, even if they're like part-time, great idea. You could also get your therapist within your practice to do it if you have other therapists at your practice, or an intern is another great person to be able to help with that. That's great. Yeah, those are smart ideas, because I know sometimes that can get costly. So if you can find a way around that, whether it's part-time help or some kind of like a barter, maybe it's a trade exchange for something. Yeah. Always nice. Here is one for you. When you said expenses should be 15 to 20% of gross revenue, are you including rent in that? Yes. Okay. Okay, because if I'm remembering that slide, I think rent, you said, should be like around 7 to 8%. You had 10, but maybe like a little lower. So the 15 to 20 of gross should include that rent. Yes. Okay. Good question. That's going to be tricky if you live in the Bay Area. Yep. I mean, it's tough. It can be tough, but I think a lot of people have more office space than what they need. Yeah. And if that means that you start out virtually until you can get some income flowing in. And again, these are like the ideal numbers.
Do
Mhm.
whatever you think you need to do.
Okay.
But I like having a little parameter in my mind. And I
Yeah.
think there are going to be times you kind of jump up a little bit over that number, like when you're growing into a new space, but it's good to be watching it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, this is another SEO question. And I think, maybe it's really already been answered because this one is there a particular company or individual you recommend to work with on SEO? Now, you were just saying you did the, DIY SEO stuff. Um, but is that something where like, of a company or individual that's
Yeah.
set up for that?
Yeah. So simplified SEO consulting will do wrapper all the things. So
Ah,
you can take a course on your own or they will do the work for you. And so I've actually had them do both for me.
okay.
I personally know the owner, so I am very biased. But one really cool thing to say about them that could be different than some other companies, they have therapists or people trained with social work backgrounds, counseling backgrounds that also do the SEO and writing. And I just think that's really powerful that you have somebody that understands that world that's writing for you. But their services, they're pricey, but it's because they're really good. And so it's worth the investment.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that when I've dabbled in SEO, like you really have to give it some time to start
Yes.
to work. And if
Mhm.
you don't see, anything happening right away, don't throw the towel in, right? Like how long did it take for you to start to see results from it?
Couple of months. I
Yeah.
think the best example I have a practice owner I was working with helping her hire her first therapist. I
Mhm.
said, you have got to start blogging. So she blogged every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock and she hated it. She has a little kid. She'd go home. She said, I don't want to do it. I was like, but your numbers have got to get up. 4 months in, her phone started ringing off the hook.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
she figured it out, but it had,
wow.
give it 3 to 6 months to see if you see a difference and watch those Google Analytics too to see if it's improving.
Yeah. Wild. Okay. This is a 1099 question, and it is, are 1099s not covered by liability insurance?
They need to carry their own liability insurance. If you have, this is so important. If you have a contractor, they need to have their own business license. Don't just pay Sally Sue, give her a check. She needs to have Sally Sue LLC or whatever company she wants. And then you pay that company. Just like my contractor, I don't just pay Steven, he's my contractor. I don't
Mhm.
just pay Steven directly. I pay Steven's company. And
Mhm.
then his company has liability insurance. And so if you hire a contractor, please make sure that they prove their liability insurance to you so that you see that they have it. And then if they're W-2s, they're covered under your practice and your liability insurance.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Next question. How do you evaluate rate if you are a SciPact and only do telehealth?
I guess your own rate, when you're setting your own rate is what we're going with there.
Yeah. It,
Yeah. I mean, I think that I would look at what other therapists are setting their rates at in your state that are also doing telehealth. I mean, I
mhm.
think if I'm guessing that person was a psychologist, is that correct?
It actually doesn't say, it just says like if you're part of SciPac, so if you can cross states. And what I'm
Mhm.
imagining is like California rates are really high, but then jump over a state, let's say Oregon, maybe it's lower. So do you have to be cognizant of that when you're treating across lines?
I'm sure that you could. I actually am not very experienced on crossing state lines.
Mm,
I'm actually not a huge fan of it because I think it's hard to manage your SEO and grow your business, but I know that people do it. So I don't really have a ton to say about that other than I think that if you're going from state to state, it sounds pretty complicated to be changing your rate with
yeah,
different people in different ways.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah, I would see. I mean, unless sometimes, do you think it's beneficial to mention that you have like a sliding scale, or does that just open up a can of worms?
I think it opens a can of worms.
Mm-hmm.
I did it when I was first starting my practice. I didn't advertise it, but when I got on calls, I talked about offering scholarships to people. And so
Mm-hmm.
they could reach out for those. But then as I grew, yeah, I don't ever offer a sliding scale anymore to see me
Yeah,
because I have enough clients that want to work with me. But then I do offer that for some of my other therapists, or I have an intern that's $60 a session. Like, so we do offer that with other people.
got it. Okay, good to know. How often do you rate increase and what amount or percentage?
Yep. So I do it annually. In fact, I actually had one therapist tell me she doesn't want me to do it again because she was tired of telling her clients her rate kept going up. So I don't think I'm going to do it this year. But how I traditionally do it is the rate goes up by $10 for new clients. So if a therapist is $100 a session, it's going to be 110 next year.
Mhm.
Current clients are 105. So I write a letter and say that, hey, even though the rate's going to be this, you can get it for this because you're a current client. They feel cared for by that. So that's how I do it. And then for my therapists, they all get raises and they get a raise 1 to 3% based on how well they're doing.
Okay, great. Uh, what is a profit percentage to aim for? What's a range of money that an owner should aim for in terms of their own takeaway from the business?
Yep. I would aim for 5%. I know that's big. Move slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't have to be the first time. I encourage y'all to check out Profit First, which is a kind of procedure or like a process for financial management within your practice. I don't know if you're familiar with Green Oak Accounting. They're a company that works specifically with therapists on their money. And there is a book called Profit First for Therapists, and it will teach you how to run all this money. That's exactly how I do it in my practice. I found it super beneficial.
Oh, that's great advice. Okay, profit first. All right, good. What is your maximum caseload per therapist?
Full-time therapists see 25 to 30 clients a week. They have to maintain 25 to stay full-time and get health insurance. And then, like I said, some of them will see all the way down to 10. So I work with each person that comes in and I hire and ask them how many clients they want to see. And I'm fine if they want to see less. They just need to see the number of clients they tell me they're going to see. For
Mhm.
me personally, I see 2 to 3 clients a week.
Okay. Okay. From Becky, where do you look to hire people?
All over. Indeed is a big one for me. I create 2 job ads with different titles because people look for different things.
Mhm.
I also use LinkedIn. In fact, we just hired an intake person through there, and I did the paid version of LinkedIn, the paid advertisement this time, and it worked. So I was really excited about that. I definitely put it on your website. I have it on my website all the time. We're always taking resumes. I have a folder in my Gmail so that I can put any resume because sometimes all of a sudden I need one and I pull it out and I can hire somebody. So make sure that you have a lot of different options, social media posts, your newsletter, let everybody know.
Okay, so really just put it out there, spread the word. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Heidi wrote in and said, you mentioned that blogging is important at the same time as, same day each week. Do you know if that works the same way with social media posts?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's a
Okay.
different kind of algorithm. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Um, okay. Let's see. Da, da, da. I think we answered one like that already. Do you happen to know of a business consultant that you'd recommend for a group practice?
Yeah, myself.
There you go. Well, you
But
go,
there's
Whitney.
but there's a lot of great consultants out there. I know you had Patrick Casale on here not too long ago. He does group practices. He's a great consultant.
Yeah.
Casey Compton is also a wonderful consultant, does group practices. Maureen Warbeck. There's there's a lot of great Lindsay Keisman, all great consultants that I have learned from personally.
Oh, that was generous of you to mention others' names in this
Yeah,
mix, because I would want to reach out to you after this presentation and
thank you.
see how you could help my practice. I think there's a couple, but I feel like the couple that are left are sort of overlapping with questions that we answered. And since we're just about at the top of the hour, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for joining us today and sharing so much incredible content. I wasn't sure what I was going to learn from this, but I'm walking away surprised by how much I gleaned from today's conversation. So for everybody still on the call, feel free to reach out to Whitney. She's generously given us her email address. I will be sending a link out to this recording later today. And this will also be transformed into an ebook that can serve as another format for you to digest this content later. So all kinds of ways to digest everything that Whitney shared today. Any final words for us, Whitney?
It's been my pleasure. I really appreciate it. Also, I am hosting a summit in October. So if you go to the Wise Practice Consulting website, you can learn all about that. It's for CEs as well. and it's all about growing your business. So check that out if you're interested in looking for an in-person conference.
Oh, and where's that going to be?
Charlotte, North Carolina, October 3rd through the 5th.
Is that a nice time of year to be in North Carolina? Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yep, we got a good speaker lineup, so make sure to go to the website and see who's coming.
All right, perfect. Thank you again so much for your time.
you.
I hope everybody on the call got something good from this, and we will see you at the next webinar.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Bye, guys.